The implementation of Project Renaissance began with deceptive smoothness. Julian Method orchestrated the transition with masterful skill, ensuring the new reporting structures, divisional responsibilities, and oversight committees were established quickly. On the surface, it looked like progress, a decisive move away from the perceived autocracy of the past towards a modern, collaborative model. But the ease of the transition was itself a warning sign, as the new system began to guide actions in ways its participants didn't fully grasp. Alistair, installed as co-head of strategic initiatives, eagerly embraced his new role. Presented with data streams curated by Julian's analytical systems, certain ventures looked exceptionally promising, while others, often long-term projects integral to the Willpower Legacy but requiring patience and significant upfront investment, were flagged as having unfavorable risk-reward ratios based on the new metrics. Guided by this seemingly objective data and eager to make his mark, Alistair championed the quick-win projects. He authorized the sale of a legacy subsidiary, a cornerstone of his grandfather's original business, because the new system highlighted its relatively low short-term profitability compared to a flashy tech startup investment. The decision, framed as decisive and forward-thinking according to Project Renaissance principles, was financially logical based on the presented data, yet it severed a crucial link to the family's history and alienated long-term employees. An act of betrayal against the legacy, made almost automatically by following the new Ursul's bossy path. Eleanor, chairing the oversight committee, found herself increasingly bogged down. The new transparent reporting structures generated overwhelming amounts of data, channeled through Julian's systems. Her committee meetings were consumed by procedural checks and minor compliance issues flagged by the system, while larger strategic shifts, like the sale of the subsidiary, were presented as operational decisions under the purview of divisional heads like Alistair, requiring only cursory review based on adherence to the new protocols. When she tried to raise concerns about the speed of change or the potential long-term impact of certain decisions, her queries were deflected by referencing the approved Project Renaissance framework. The system itself seemed designed to obscure strategic implications behind a facade of procedural correctness. Her attempts at oversight became routine checks, her diligence channeled into bureaucratic tasks, effectively neutralizing her ability to challenge the broader direction, a betrayal of her own sharp instincts, facilitated by the very system meant to ensure integrity. Even loyal senior executives, now heading decentralized divisions, fell into the trap. Empowered to make decisions based on localized data, again filtered through Julian's analytics, they initiated cost-cutting measures that boosted short-term profits but damaged long-term supplier relationships and product quality. These actions were rewarded under the new performance metrics Julian had helped design. Following the seemingly logical, satisfying path laid out by the new system, they made choices that prioritized immediate gains over the sustained, quality-focused approach that had defined the Willpower brand, inadvertently eroding the company's core values. Victoria, relegated to chairperson emeritus, watched with growing unease. Isolated from the operational flow, her attempts to intervene were gently rebuffed, framed as interference in the new, approved structure. Her warnings were dismissed as resistance to change, relics of the old willpower method. She saw the legacy being chipped away, piece by piece, not through overt rebellion, but through a series of seemingly rational, almost automatic decisions made by people following a system designed to lead them astray. The betrayal wasn't a single act, but a creeping erosion, facilitated by a structure that made damaging choices feel like the right thing to do. The catalyst for Julian Method's unmasking came not from within the corporate structure he now largely controlled, but from the periphery he had likely discounted. The meticulous, persistent investigation by Eleanor, aided by the guilt-ridden Mr. Abernathy. Following Abernathy's confession, Eleanor hadn't stopped digging. While fulfilling her duties on the Oversight Committee, she secretly worked with Abernathy and a small team of external cybersecurity experts she hired discreetly, bypassing Willpower Enterprises' internal IT, now heavily influenced by Julian's team. Abernathy provided crucial historical context, remembering names, dates, and details related to the implementation of the original hidden protocol. Eleanor directed the investigation, focusing on anomalies that predated Julian but might have been exploited by him. Their breakthrough came when analyzing the offshore shell corporation linked to the secret bank account, Topic 4. While the ownership was obscured, the digital footprint wasn't entirely clean. The experts traced the initial setup of the corporation years prior, long before Julian's arrival. However, they found recent, sophisticated modifications to its structure and fund transfer mechanisms, changes made shortly after Julian gained high-level access during his diagnostic phase. More damningly, they found fragments of encrypted communications linking the account's recent activity to burner phones and temporary email addresses used during the Argentis acquisition's final, disastrous stages. Simultaneously, Abernathy recalled a specific detail about the original hidden protocol. It included a rarely used emergency override function, known only to the original implementers and documented in obscure archived files. He guided Eleanor to these physical archives deep within the mansion's secure storage. There, amongst dusty files, they found logs showing this override function had been accessed and subtly modified. Not recently, but shortly after Julian Method began his consultancy. The modification didn't disable the protocol. It created a specific vulnerability, a backdoor that could allow manipulated data, like the flawed Argentis reports, to bypass the intended, albeit flawed, checks if introduced in a specific way. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Julian hadn't just identified the flaws in Victoria's system and the original hidden protocol, he had actively exploited and manipulated them. He likely discovered the existence of the old protocol during his diagnostics. He then modified its override function to create a vulnerability. He used this vulnerability to ensure the flawed Argentis reports reached Victoria under pressure, triggering the scandal that discredited her willpower method. He simultaneously used the offshore account, perhaps pre-existing, perhaps co-opted, to manage payments related to the sabotage, or simply to enrich himself. His Project Renaissance wasn't just about consolidating control, it was the final step in exploiting the family's reaction. By blaming the system, both Victoria's overt methods and the covert protocol he secretly manipulated, he justified implementing his own system, one designed for his complete control. He exploited Victoria's reliance on her old ways by making them fail spectacularly, then exploited the family's desire for a better way by providing a solution that served only him. Eleanor compiled the evidence, the digital forensics linking Julian to the account and its timing, the archive logs showing the modification of the hidden protocol's override, Abernathy's testimony providing context. It was a complex web, but the pattern was undeniable. Julian Method wasn't a savior. He was a sophisticated predator who had studied his prey, identified its weaknesses, both the overt reliance on willpower and the hidden, flawed systems, and systematically engineered its downfall for his own gain. The evidence was ready. The time had come to confront the architect of their near ruin to unmask the method behind the man. The confrontation took place not in the sterile boardroom, but in the heart of the Willpower Mansion, the Grand Library, a room filled with the weight of history and secrets. Eleanor had summoned Julian Method under the pretext of discussing urgent findings from the Oversight Committee. Victoria was present, seated like a deposed queen, her face etched with a mixture of fury and weary understanding. Alistair stood near the window, conflicted and pale. Abernathy waited discreetly by the door. Julian entered with his usual confident stride, though a flicker of surprise crossed his features upon seeing the assembled group. Eleanor, he began, addressing her directly, I trust this is important. Project Renaissance requires careful management during this crucial phase. This is about the real project, Julian, Eleanor stated, her voice cold and steady. She laid out the evidence systematically. The forensic analysis of the offshore account, the logs from the archive detailing the modification of the hidden protocol's override, Abernathy's testimony. The Argentis scandal wasn't just a system failure, it was engineered. By you. Julian listened, his enigmatic smile slowly fading, replaced by a look of grudging admiration. Impressive, he conceded. You found the breadcrumbs. Yes, I exploited the vulnerabilities. The old protocol, Victoria's reliance on sheer force, they were weaknesses waiting to be leveraged. Project Renaissance was simply the logical endgame to consolidate control after demonstrating the failure of the old ways. You bled this family, this company, Victoria spat, her voice trembling with rage. Julian shrugged, a gesture of nonchalance that was infuriating. Business is about identifying and exploiting inefficiencies, Mrs. Willpower. Your family's inefficiency was its belief in its own mythology. I simply provided a more effective narrative, a better method. Who are you working for? Alistair demanded, finally finding his voice. Julian laughed, a short, humorless sound. Working for? You still don't understand. I wasn't the master strategist. I was a tool. A very effective, highly compensated tool, but a tool nonetheless. A pawn? Eleanor pressed, sensing the final layer peeling away. Who hired you? Who knew about the original hidden protocol well enough to guide you to exploit it? Who benefited most from Victoria being undermined and the company being thrown into chaos? Julian's eyes flickered towards the doorway, a strange expression crossing his face. Not fear, but perhaps anticipation? My contract is fulfilled. My employer prefers anonymity. Just as Eleanor was about to press further, a new voice spoke, soft yet carrying immense weight, cutting through the tension. Oh, I think it's time the anonymity ended, don't you, Julian? All heads turned. Standing in the doorway, having entered silently behind Abernathy, was someone utterly unexpected. Not a disgruntled executive, not a corporate rival, but Marcus Thorne, the head of M&A, the man Victoria had humiliated weeks earlier, the man who had seemed broken by the Argentus fallout. But this wasn't the same Marcus Thorne. The nervous deference was gone, replaced by an unnerving calm, a predatory stillness. His eyes, usually darting nervously, were fixed on Victoria with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Marcus? Victoria breathed, bewildered. It was never about willpower versus method, Victoria, Thorne said, stepping fully into the room. Julian Method subtly moved aside, his role clearly concluded. It was about revenge. Your late husband didn't just authorize that hidden protocol after Eurotech. I helped design it. I was his protege then, loyal, ambitious. He saw your recklessness, your ego, and we built a cage to contain it. He smiled, a chilling expression devoid of warmth. After your husband died, I thought my time would come. But you held on tighter than ever. You promoted others, you relied on your force, you never saw me. The system we built, I learned to manipulate it over the years. I triggered some of those little failures, the broken deals, just enough to keep you off balance, to remind myself the system worked. The Argentis deal? Eleanor whispered. My masterpiece, Thorne admitted without shame. I knew the environmental reports were flawed. I ensured they reached the right people at the right time, knowing the hidden protocol had weaknesses I could exploit under pressure. I needed a scandal big enough to finally break your grip. Julian Method? He gestured dismissively at the consultant. A necessary expense. He was brought in to provide the solution, the new system that would put control firmly where it belonged, with me. He looked around the stunned room, his gaze lingering on Victoria. The secret account? Mine, of course. The price of my patience. The reward for years spent in the shadow of your willpower. Now the company is restructured, your power broken, and the board is ready to appoint an interim leader. Guess who they'll turn to? The steady hand who navigated the crisis, the one who understands the new system because he secretly controlled the old one. The architect wasn't the outsider, it was the insider, the one everyone underestimated, driven by decades of resentment. The final scene lingered on Thorne's triumphant, chilling smile as Victoria stared, finally understanding the true depth of the betrayal. Her iron will finally, irrevocably shattered not by a flawed method, but by a perfectly executed, long-simmering revenge.